Welcome to the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union Board of Directors meeting. It's September 30th, 2020. Those present include Matthew Bykowski, William Basic, Catamount Access TV and Cat TV are here, Chayla Sikora, Laura Boudreau, Ray Molyneux, Fran Kinney, Nicole Whalen, if I pronounced that correctly, Nicole, Renee Gordon, Frank Barnes, Nick Galt, James Culkeen, and we have Sean Marie Aller. I don't see any other entries here. Did you get all that, Richard?
Yeah, got it all, thanks.
Okay. Let's start by reading the agenda. First of all, welcome to Arlington and Sandgate folks. Glad to have you tie in with us here. Item 1, public comments. Item 2, finance operations and related items, which includes the treasurer's reports for July and August. The consent agenda, minutes, warrants. I see no resignations, retirements, or leave of absence, but I do see nominations. There are no policies this evening. Item 5 would be the superintendent's report. 6, the chair's report. 7, other business brought before the board. And the budget status report has been included in packets for your information. Is that agenda satisfactory to those assembled? Seeing no objection. And Scott McInerney just came on board along with Adam Samroff. Richard?
Okay.
I see no objection to the agenda. I just want one short statement here. While we may have some strong feelings about some controversial statements that have been made by a member of another board within the SVSU, the Mount Anthony board can adequately handle that issue. We have an SVSU agenda to address, and I would ask that any public comments be measured and respectful so that we can complete the agenda we have before us. If there are no objections, we'll move on to public comments. Are there any members of the public that would like to be recognized for comment? Hearing none. Finance and operations, the treasurer's report for July and August 2020. Is there a motion to accept that report? Those reports?
Motion to accept.
I have a motion from Scott, a second.
Second.
That was Chayla?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any discussion? The only thing I would like to add is change is that the cash flow line on the top of the account balance sheet says 8/120 to 0/31/20. I know it's a picky deal, but some auditor will want to look at that someday. So I believe that should be 8/31/20 instead of 0.
I'll check to the treasurer and have her fix that.
Not a big deal, just one of those little nitpicking things. For any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Or raising your hand.
Aye.
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 Are any opposed? Abstentions? All right.
Just as a matter of course, not being my first meeting, I will abstain from most votes unless it directly relates to issues within Arlington. So thank you.
So we will list Nicole as an abstention here.
Is there a member from Sandgate present tonight, or is it both Arlington?
It's 2 from Arlington. Celeste Keel, I don't see that she's on. She is the Sandgate representative.
Thank you.
I think we just voted, did we not? All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. And there was none in opposition, and one abstention is Nicole. All right, thank you. Motion carries. The consent agenda, item 3, which includes the minutes, warrants, and nominations. Is there a motion?
I moved.
Motion from Chayla. Do we have a second? Second from Scott. Thank you. Is there discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? And Matthew, and did I see Nicole? Matthew and Nicole are abstentions, and the motion carries. There is no policy this evening, which moves us to the superintendent's report. You're
Good
on.
evening. Good evening and welcome to Arlington and Sue Sandgate. I asked Nick Galt and Renee Gordon. Nick Galt is our HR director and Renee Gordon is our director of finance and operations. Since they're going to, I asked them to attend this evening so that they could give updates to the SVSU Board and to our new members on the progress that we have already made towards bringing you into our SU. I did have included in the packet on the agenda is the memorandum from Secretary of Education Daniel French to the State Board of Education, and then we have John Carroll's letter back to us. This is from an email that Bill and I and Todd and Jeannie, and I think Nicole signed it also, that went to the State Board asking that even we had a plan in place we're not asking them to unmerge us or anything like that, but to delay it because of what both SUs are dealing with COVID-19. And clearly Secretary French thought that he's sympathetic to the argument, but felt that we were showing a pattern of delay, so he would not support telling the board, the State Board, to delay any further. And as you saw from the letter from John Carroll, that they expect us to begin on July 1 of 2021. So I'm going to pause for a minute. I just would like to ask if there are any board members who would like to comment on any of those, either the memorandum from Dan French or the response from the board. And does either board anticipate any further action, or is this final resolution?
Either from the Arlington side, I think we've discussed this, and at this point, I think we're and Nicole can back me up on this, but in summary, that we're ready to follow through with the mandate is set forward and work together to do this in a timely and thoughtful manner. I understand that for you guys, it's a bit of a stretch given everything else that's going on, and it is slightly for us too. But I think we just all have to recognize that we have to get it done. And if we can get, I'm not as familiar with how your organization works, so looking forward to learning that. And if we can get assigned a project manager so that we can make sure we hit milestones appropriately, I think that'll be great. And looking forward to working with you.
Anyone else want to, before I ask? Ray, were you going to say something?
I'd just like clarification. Are the members from Arlington voting members at this point, or what is their status there?
I believe they are, based from the directive, the original directive from Secretary French, that they could have been voting members anytime after November 15th of 19, I think it was. So, but the practicality of it is to, I I did. My board members decided to wait to see what happened, what transpired with this one last attempt to ask for an extension. And I think, Nicole already expressed tonight that she's going to limit taking her votes and to issues that directly affect Arlington for the time being. Is how I interpret that. But there really is no restriction from my interpretation of the directive from Secretary French, so that they are duly elected members to the SU board. So I'm going to ask Nick Galt first, because last Monday we had a new employee come into the supervisory union through an arrangement with Arlington and Sandgate. And Rick, I don't know, Nick, could you give us an update on that progress, please?
Yes. So as most of you probably know, we came to an agreement with the BVSU and Arlington School District to essentially pick up some human resources, payroll, and business office finance functions in the wake of their departure of their HR payroll accounts payable person. So we assumed those duties, and in doing so, we decided it made sense to bring in an additional employee to be split between the HR and the finance departments. That person was hired successfully and started on the 21st. So just to give you a brief overview of kind of the services that we've taken on at this point, the primary one being payroll. So we're running and processing payroll and kind of all associated reports for BVSU and Arlington, and have been doing so since July 1. And we are doing that with our internal staff who are proficient in the system. Budget Sense having just recently come from it a year ago. We're providing some HR support in terms of assistance with leave absences and just provide guidance and things of that nature. And the new hire is allowing us to kind of maintain our existing workflows, take on that kind of increased work without disrupting kind of the SVSU's work or the BVSU and Arlington School District's work. And so far, at least from the HR perspective, because this is a split position, it seems to be working really well. A little bit of learning about the employees and some of the processes for the BVSU in Arlington, but it's sort of it's a big chunk that we're sort of getting a head start on and learning all of that, getting proficient and up to speed so that come next year, that's one less cycle that we have to learn and become capable of doing. So far I think it's going very well from my perspective.
Thank you, Nick. I also asked Director of Finance and Operation, Renee Gordon, to come this evening. Her work really with this is just beginning as we begin our budget season, but there is going to be a big lift for her department as we do budget planning for both. So good evening, Renee.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. Just to kind of jump onto what Nick was talking about, we have at least 2 members of the business office staff right now also offering support to BVSU currently. We're assisting with bank reconciliations. There's been some questions about migrating, rolling over from one fiscal year to another. So we're assisting with that, some journal entries. And then I think most recently, I know BVSU and member districts have gone through their audits, so we're offering some support there. Thankfully, we actually have the same auditing firm, RHR Smith and Company, so we'll be able to hopefully mesh things together pretty well there. They will be here at our SU next week. As for getting ready for July 1 of 2021, I'm currently working on migrating over the current chart of accounts into the new state mandated chart of accounts. So I'm working with the Agency of Education on that. We've also started implementation of eFinance Plus. So Arlington and Sandgate operations right now are still on Infinite Visions. It's a Tyler Technologies product. But I guess the state AOE decided that they were going to put Arlington and Sandgate in what they call round 6 of eFinance Plus implementation. So that started July 1 of 20 and will be live on their system as of July 1 of 21. So we're working to get all of that set up. We're live on that system and have been for over a year now. And then, yes, the budgets. I will be working with Bob Mason, kind of side by side on that before it fully falls on to this business office come next year. So I think that's about all I have on that front.
Thank you, Renee.
Can
So-
I ask a question, Jim?
Yes.
For those people who are part of the finance committee assignments for the SVSU, we're scheduled to take a look at budgets by when?
Well, typically, Renee will start meeting with principals shortly if she already hasn't, and then as we build budgets, and by late November, December, we'll start a budget meeting with all the different boards, so that our goal would be early January that we would be done. Renee, do you want to tweak that timeline at all? Or?
I actually was thinking about it this morning because typically what I do is, we have to look to see what day the election is going to be and then back out so we know when our warnings have to be done. That kind of dictates how all the dates will fall. But of course, we do want to have the SU budget set first and that one approved, because then we have to calculate all the assessments and get those built into the local budgets. So like to have that done. We usually end of November, beginning of December is when we shoot to have the SU budget done.
So our committee includes myself and Susan Hogue, Ray Molyneux, and Shayla. Just to throw it out there, so we're thinking about it. Thank you.
Yeah. So I've had some meetings with our legal counsel on this merger and what some of the issues that are going to need to be addressed going forward. I mean, food service is one, transportation, special education, contract negotiations, because we have completely separate contracts for both teachers and support staff, and we will be negotiating. I'm not sure where the status is with BVSU. I had audit on my list. Renee mentioned that. In legal services, you have a different legal service team than we have, so all those items need to be addressed. I don't see us merging teacher contracts. I see negotiations continuing separately because you are a separate school district, just like the Union Elementary School and the MAU are separate districts, so they do share a contract. And policy is another area that we're going to have to address. I don't know how well BVSU's policy manual lines up with the SVSU, but those are all going to be some merger pains that we're going to have to work through. And there's probably many more that I haven't even thought of or addressed. Special education may be a challenge because that has to come under the SU, and how we merge, and these are discussions I've had with our attorney and with our director of HR, how do we merge that under one SU when you have two different teacher contracts doing the same position? And our thought is, this is not going to be an overnight merger, and we're going to try and keep things as separate as possible as first, say, with this special education contract. And when it will have to be adjusted is if we start sharing staff between the two districts, because then they have two different rates of pay. We do have some experience with that, particularly with Woodford, which wasn't under the teacher's contract before. So we did have teachers who received multiple paychecks from two different school districts, and that, if it gets to the point that we're sharing special education staff, that may be one way that we resolve that issue, as opposed to attempting to merge teacher contracts at the same time that we're doing, everything else. So, so I guess it all starts from here. This is really the first meeting that we've all been together and talked about it. And, Bill and I have discussions, but we need to accelerate that and involve board members. So my thought is that we may put I think, Matthew, you mentioned, a project coordinator. We don't have one at this point, but that may be a valid idea that we appoint a point person that starts identifying these people. But I really see more of a committee forming, a smaller group from this committee here, from this board here rather, to work through these issues with them. So board members and administrators sitting down and going through it. So that I think is the next logical step for this as we move forward. And I just want to repeat a little what Nick said. I think our staff at the SU did a great job starting July 1 to take this on. And now we have a dedicated person there. So I think it will go even smoother. I think there was always a little doubt that, like, was this going to happen? Was there a last minute reprieve? So before we, really dig into it, let's wait and see what happens. But, and I wanted to hear from the board today that there isn't going to be any legal challenge or, a further appeal before we, really dig in deep with this. And it sounds like there isn't. So it's time to move forward.
Well, I think, from our vantage point in Arlington, I don't think anybody has felt like there has been, from either party, and unfortunately at the State Board of Ed meeting, it was represented as, dragging our feet and not making progress. And that's really unfortunate because that's not at all representative of what's been happening. You're, at the time that we were assigned, you were dealing with a full elementary district merger, which is still, I would imagine, not
There's some growing pains.
complete.
Yeah.
And I think the request for the transition timeline was very reasonable. And it is unfortunate that it was not seen in that light. So I appreciate what the SVSU board and all of your member districts have done up to this point to get us here. But there is no feeling that anyone has been avoiding or dragging feet or not participating. Everyone's just been really busy.
Well, thank you, Nicole, because I appreciate it, because I took exception to the phrase a pattern of delay. I don't. Yeah.
And, I echo everything that Nicole just said, and I appreciate Superintendent Kakeen, your kind of summary of where we're at and where we need to go. I think that put my mind at ease a little bit, that at least now I know that you're really, we've been thinking about this, and this board has been investing a little bit of time in that. I think just because we haven't been attending these meetings, we didn't have at least I personally didn't have a good feeling that we even had a path to get started in an effective manner. I work with Scott McEnany and I've worked with Nicole before, so they both know that I'm a very direct individual and I'm very timeline driven. And that's not personal against anybody. It's just the way that I operate. But I appreciate your overview, and that has put my mind at ease. So, to a certain extent. So I appreciate that.
And I will make sure that our website is updated and you are now listed as members of the SVSU board on our website, and that you will not have to email and ask to make sure that you get the packages to me, that you will get them automatically as part of the distribution.
I appreciate that. I'm definitely not shy to ask if you talk to anybody that knows me.
No, I appreciate that. Go
Is
ahead.
there any reason that the policy committee can't contact Matt, Nicole, Todd, whoever we need to start looking at policies and see how we compare and see how we could meld issues?
Yeah.
There's no reason why we can't get that started.
Right. And I'm not saying I want to operate this way, but I discussed policy manuals with our legal service provider, and the response was there are SUs that do not have consolidated policy manuals. You can have one school district that's operating under one policy manual and the others under another. It can make it difficult sometimes for administration and confusing for board members. But so I would be an advocate that we could somehow merge the policy manuals and maybe even someday down in the future the contracts are merged too. But we'll take that one step at a time. But yeah, I think it's a good point, Dick, that we could ask the policy committee. Leon's not here tonight, but when they start meeting, that could be one of their tasks. Is in addition to vetting and drafting new policies, looking for where there's commonality in the two documents.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, Dick. I think it would be great to compare the two and just see where are the differences, right? Because that gives us a baseline to start. Maybe, who knows, maybe they're not all that different and it would be relatively easy from an administrative standpoint.
Well, I'll start with sending your superintendent a copy of our policy, and he can send me one of theirs, and then we'll go from there. We'll do a little light reading first.
And I'll get to Leon so that we can plan on things.
So Jim, do I understand correctly then that you and Bill will work together with your team there to kind of outline what the timeline is and what
Yes.
those priority next steps are?
That I would hope that would happen. Yes.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to address in my report, I wanted to read something that the administrators of the SU released back in June, and I didn't read it publicly at that time, but I am going to this evening. Dear SVSU community, silence is the voice of the oppressor. Our current times press us to make clear our values and join forces with those who stand against discrimination. As a school system, we are a small representation of our larger society. If they are now not acknowledged, injustices that exist outside our school communities live and are reborn within our walls. As a collective leadership team, the SVSU will not accept the perpetuation of the status quo, and we will seek to grow in our understanding and confrontation of passive and active racism, sexism, classism, heteronormalization, and many other biases holding one group in a higher power than the other. We will stand with community action groups working to end discriminatory systems of power, and we promise to continue our personal and community journey towards a more just world, especially when it becomes difficult to do so. In our experience, we have come to understand children are fully able to participate in conversations about equity, equality, and social justice. In fact, they are eager to do so. We encourage you to have conversations about these deeply rooted issues in American history and to ask open questions and to listen to your children's thoughts and feelings. We look forward to connecting both within our individual school communities and our larger SVSU community for education and activism. And I quote, ending with this from Desmond Tutu: "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." And this was signed by myself and assistant superintendent, all directors, all principals, vice principals, associate directors. We said we issued this in June, and we felt it would be appropriate to reissue it again yesterday, and I wanted to read it to everyone this evening. And that's my report at this time.
Thank you, Jim. I have very little to say. I just want to say thanks to Jim and the staff for the continued oversight. The Mount Anthony situation was addressed. There was good follow-up about how the procedures were going, how the timetables would go. I just wanted to say that's good. And I wanted to ask a question without nailing you, Jim. Can you explain something about the Townsend Amendment that's an amendment to S245? I didn't understand it.
Yeah. So there was a statewide negotiation last year for health insurance. So all school employees are now part of a statewide health insurance. It was negotiated by the Vermont State Board, School Board Association, and representatives of Vermont NEA. So one thing that did not happen during that statewide negotiation, there was a proposal by the NEA that there would be a sliding scale for health insurance. You make less, you pay less, you make more, you pay more. Where right now, regardless of what you pay the same, we pay the same percentage for you, the school district does, and the employee pays the same percentage. There is some question of whether that is fair and equitable, since health insurance, it really wasn't an issue when health insurance was inexpensive, but as it has escalated in cost, it has brought up the question of equity. But there was a statewide negotiation for health insurance, and it wasn't added into it. So my understanding at the last moment of the legislative session, Vermont NEA put that amendment, the Townsend Amendment, got that supported and added on to another bill that would have put in sliding scale health insurance fees. And the objection was, wait a minute, you just negotiated an agreement, and you shouldn't be using the legislature as an end around to what you did get in negotiations. Go back to the negotiating table. And I'm not debating whether it's fair or equitable. I'm just saying that the process should have been negotiation. And that amendment did get defeated in the House. So I'm sure it's an issue that will continue to come up as health insurance escalates in cost. And Nick was involved in our negotiations also, and was monitoring that statewide negotiations, because it impacted our budget as it was. And where this would have impacted us this time is, so anyone who would then be paying more for health insurance, and directors, principals, associate directors, associate principals. I don't know where the cut line would have been when who pays more and who pays less, but I could have foresaw where then they would want to renegotiate their contract because they would want to be made whole, as the term is used in negotiations, because their take home would now be less because of the increase of their insurance. And so that's why it was not supported by the Vermont School Board Association, the Vermont Principals Association, the Vermont Superintendents Association, that the impact on the budget would have been, a reopening of negotiations with those, because your teachers are, part of a union. And so, and I know that many of you who work in the private sector say like, well, my health insurance goes up. My pay doesn't go up to cover that. But, we are in a unionized environment that impacts things differently.
Thanks, Jim. I'm not so quick on finances, so I got lost and decided to read the bill to see how everything fit into there, and it was a mess.
A good response from our local representative, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. Are there any other items to be brought before the board?
Hey Dick, this is Scott McEnany. I've been sitting here thinking about it, and I guess I would ask this of you or the board. After reading back in June the equality statement, and then hearing it again this evening, given and especially in light of everything that's gone on both locally and nationally, is there an action that this board should take that aligns ourselves with that statement? Jim had directors, senior leaders of the SU sign that document. I'm of the position that as a board member, I should sign that document. I'm not sure whether that's actually the case, but I want to bring it before the board for discussion. I feel like we should be in solidarity on that statement as well.
I think we can do that, Scott, but it hasn't been listed on the agenda, so I would think it would have to be considered as a part of a new agenda, which
that's fair.
Which I'm sure can be accomplished.
I can share that, Scott, with the chair when we put the agenda together, and then you could put it on the agenda that you could all vote on it.
Jim, should it be included as an agenda item for every board?
I will ask each chair what gets put on the agenda. Scott is really the chair's decision, but with your recommendation, I will offer that to every board as we put the agendas together going forward for the month of September and October. We're in October, sorry.
Great, thank you.
I'm sure it can be included in the SVSU
Yep.
agenda.
Richard, I will send Richard an emailed copy, Richard, so that you can have it for the minutes.
Yeah, I'll include that as an attachment.
Thank you.
Are there other issues brought before the board? Hearing none, there is, for your information, the SVSU budget status has been included in the packets. And if there are no other issues, we will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Excuse me.
Second.
Do I hear?
This is Adam Sarah from the Banner. I just have a quick question because this is the first time I've really covered this issue. Trish was our reporter, was covering the SVSU, BVSU mergers and stuff. I just had to ask a question really quick.
Go ahead.
So with Arlington and Sandgate merging into the SU, that doesn't mean that the Arlington school is going to be dissolved or anything like that, right? Like the
No,
kids
it
that
does
live in
not.
Arlington are going now are still going to be going to that. That's just going to be under the SVSU's.
Correct, Adam.
purvey.
They will remain an independent school district, but they'll be under the umbrella of the SVSU. It's the BVSU that is dissolved, not the Arlington School District or the Sandgate School District.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it.
And Adam, there are a number of issues that have to be addressed that I'm not sure if you heard Jim talk about, food and transportation policy, et cetera, before all of that can be accomplished. So that's a slow process that will get started step by step. We'll get it accomplished, but it doesn't dissolve Arlington School District.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because I wasn't 100% sure. So thank you for the clarification. That really, it does help me kind of get it. So appreciate it. Thank you.
And I think we have a motion to adjourn from Scott. Do we have a second?
I seconded it.
Jail, a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Are there those opposed or abstentions? Thank you, folks.
Thank you all.
Adjourned.